Every government owes money. Every nation lives in debt. And yet, no one ever asks the most obvious question: who do they owe it all to? If every country is buried under trillions of dollars in debt, then who is the creditor? Who sits at the top of this global pyramid, collecting interest from entire nations? The answer isn't a single person. It's not a country. It's something far more powerful and far more hidden. An empire that has no borders, no flag, and no army. An empire that profits not from war or trade, but from debt itself. This is the story of the hidden empire that controls the world's money, without ever appearing on the map. Origins, the seed of control. To understand how this empire came to exist, we have to go back to the early 1700s. When Europe was at war, kings needed money, but they didn't have it. So they turned to private bankers, wealthy families like the Rothschilds, the Warburgs, and the Barings. In exchange for loans, these bankers demanded something far more valuable than repayment: control. They began lending not to individuals, but to entire governments, knowing that wars would guarantee repayment through taxes, land, and interest. Soon, the richest men in Europe realized a powerful truth. If you control a nation's debt, you control its destiny. By the 19th century, this financial aristocracy had more power than kings themselves. They could fund both sides of a war, profit from every bullet fired, and decide which nation rose or fell based on credit. The rise. When debt became a business. The 20th century transformed this private network into a global system. In 1913, the United States created the Federal Reserve, a central bank designed not by the government, but by a small group of private bankers meeting in secret on Jekyll Island. Their mission? To stabilize the economy. Their power? To print money out of nothing and lend it to the government with interest. For the first time, a country's money supply was not controlled by its people, but by a private institution. And America wasn't alone. Over the next 50 years, nearly every major nation established its own central bank. Most of them tied through policy, coordination, and trade to the same network of financial elites and global organizations. Debt was no longer a burden. It became the product. Governments borrowed, banks printed, and citizens paid the price through inflation, a silent tax on everyone who held money instead of debt. The breaking point. When money lost its soul. In 1944, as World War II came to an end, global leaders gathered in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. There they created a new economic order, the Bretton Woods system. The U.S. dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency, backed by gold. Every other nation pegged its currency to the dollar. But in 1971, that system collapsed. President Richard Nixon cut the final link between money and gold, turning the dollar into pure fiat currency, backed by nothing but debt and trust. In that moment, money itself changed form. No longer a representation of value, it became a claim on future debt. Every dollar in existence was now created by borrowing. And who issues that debt? The same network of central banks and international institutions that designed the system. The hidden empire had matured. The fallout, enslavement by design. Once money became debt, the game was set. Countries borrowed to fund wars, welfare, and infrastructure. Corporations borrowed to buy back shares. Citizens borrowed to afford homes, cars, and education. By the early 2000s, global debt had surpassed global GDP several times over. The world was now running not on productivity, but on credit. And who provided that credit? A web of institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, and the Bank for International Settlements, all claiming to help nations stabilize and grow. But the terms of those loans often came with brutal strings attached: privatization, austerity, and loss of sovereignty. Nations like Argentina, Greece, and many across Africa and Asia discovered the same truth. Debt was a trap. an invisible chain that turned countries into clients of the global financial empire. Each rescue package was just a deeper form of control. The illusion of rescue. Crashes for profit. Crashes aren't accidents. They're opportunities. The 2008 financial crisis exposed the true face of this empire. Banks created toxic debt, sold it across the world, and when the system collapsed, the same institutions were bailed out by public money. Losses were socialized, profits were privatized, and in the process, central banks injected trillions of dollars into markets, buying government bonds and corporate assets, becoming the single largest financial players on Earth. The result? A world where the free market no longer exists. Every crash, every bailout, every new wave of printed money tightens the same noose. A concentration of power among central banks, hedge funds, and supranational lenders. Debt became the bloodstream of the world economy, and those who control it control everything. The new era. Digital chains. Today, global debt exceeds $320 trillion. That's roughly 3 times the world's total economic output. But the next stage of this empire's evolution is even more dangerous. Central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, are being developed in over 100 countries. They promise convenience and safety, but they also promise control. Unlike paper money, digital currency can be tracked, limited, or even deleted. With programmable money, a government or central bank could decide how you spend, when you spend, and even if you're allowed to spend. Combine that with digital ID systems and social credit scores, and you have a world where freedom is conditional, based on compliance. This is not a future conspiracy. It's policy already in motion. The same empire that created the debt-based system is now building its replacement. A digital financial grid where control is total and resistance is nearly impossible. The pattern. History doesn't repeat, it evolves. Look closely and you'll see the pattern repeating for centuries. 1. Create a system of debt. 2. Expand it until it collapses. 3. Use the crisis to centralize more power. 4. Rebuild the same system under a new name. It happened after the Great Depression, after World War II, after 2008, and it's happening again, right now. Each time, the same institutions emerge stronger while nations, workers, and savers lose a little more independence. The empire of debt doesn't need to conquer nations. It simply makes them borrow. Lessons. What we can learn. Lesson 1. Debt is the weapon. It doesn't explode, it expands. And through expansion, it enslaves. Lesson 2. Inflation is the illusion of growth. When prices rise, it looks like progress, but it's really the dilution of value, the invisible tax that funds the empire. Lesson 3. True power hides behind institutions, not leaders. Governments change, but the lenders remain the same. Warning: the next reset. Every empire eventually resets, but this one doesn't fall, it rebrands. From gold to paper, from paper to digital, the goal has always been the same: total control through credit. The next reset won't come with an invasion or a coup. It will come with a new currency, sold as innovation, but built for surveillance. And when that happens, debt will no longer just control nations, it will control you. If this story opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Share this video, expose the patterns, and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden architecture of money, debt, and control. Because the first step to escaping an empire is realizing you're living inside one.